Welcome to another installment of the Evolution Exchange podcast. Today we're here with Jussi, the CEO of Nitro in Helsinki. We've got another really interesting discussion today. So we're going to start the podcast with a little bit of background about yourself, your individual career. So could you tell us a little bit more about how Nitro came to be, how you started the company?
Yeah, sure. So we obviously go a long way back since Nitro is one of the oldest game studios here in Finland. And our sort of story begins in the early 2000s. I was like a young boy back then, fresh from school, or actually still in school, to be honest. I was going through education for digital media and marketing and stuff like that. So digital marketing was my thing, including websites and multimedia and stuff like that. And back then I ended up working for a company called Nitro FX, which back then was, I think, the sort of sexiest marketing agency who had all the coolest customers and all the latest and greatest technologies that they experimented with and stuff like that. And that's where I met a guy called Antti Villanen, who was essentially leading that digital marketing agency. After a couple of twists and turns, we co-founded Nitro Games basically within that company. And we gathered a pool of people from 3D, from programming and stuff like that, who had the passion for games as well. And after a couple of first twists and turns, eventually in 2007, Nitro Games was established as its own company and so on. And we started by making PC strategy games. Those got published by publishers like Paradox Interactive and so on. And that's how things got to go. So basically a hobby turned into a profession after a couple of twists and turns.
So your initial career wasn't within gaming, but it formulated from sort of your passion for games.
Yeah. Growing up as a kid, I've been playing games my whole life, and I've had games as a hobby also from the sort of how are those things made. I've been doing a lot of my own mini games as a sort of one-man army and doing a lot of modding, and the whole thing about how people create games has always fascinated me a lot. But I never ever thought that could actually become a profession of any kind. So digital marketing and digital media was the thing that I was studying, and that was supposed to be my career, but little did I know.
And you've gone straight into like founding a company as well, rather than just going into the games industry, as a career, as part of another company. You've gone from the beginning of I'm going to find my own company and develop things. So what sort of inspired you to do that and take that route?
We very much had the attitude that we were maybe naive and stuff. How difficult can it be to build your own games? So we maybe didn't know better, and thus we had the sort of courage to sort of go through everything trial and error in the beginning. As an afterthought, I think it was a great move. It meant that we really had to sort of learn our way of doing it and make sure that we have the relevant people there and things going. And because we didn't have endless resources, we were not playing with somebody else's money and things like this. We also had to make sure that there's an output and that we get the business side of things going as well. And I think that also reflected in the sort of early years of Nitro, that we had to have quite a lot of focus on the business side of things as well to make sure that we can keep going, because it was, us and our own very little amounts of money that were on the play.
Yeah, I can imagine there's, multiple challenges with running a company, but particularly in the early days of founding a company, where you said you got people together from all sort of disciplines.
Yeah.
How difficult was that to get people on board with your sort of vision of what you wanted Nitro to be in the early days of bringing people onto the company?
I think in the beginning, think about the first couple of years when our scale was something like 10-ish heads, depending a little bit from time to time, but we were not like huge inside. That was surprisingly easy. But then sort of after that, it became a really big challenge, which of course continues to be a challenge today, because I think the whole concept of having the best people is so vital in this business, and it's like the moment you crack one nut, you introduce several new nuts to be cracked. So it's a never-ending journey in a way. And our sort of initial take on that was that since we were based in Finland, which is a country with very limited resources on everything to begin with, because we're so small country. And when we started, we didn't have a gaming industry in Finland like we have today. It looked very different. So we started to simply collaborate a lot. So we started to work with different art studios, some of which were already familiar with producing art for games, but also with some, 3D studios who had not done games before, but they had people who had games as a hobby, so they kind of knew what they were doing, even if technically they didn't have the resume and stuff like that. So we essentially started to outsource in a way, but we did the sort of outsourcing in a different mindset than many other companies how they approach it, because we always wanted to make sure that it's a people business in a way. So we got really close with them and really wanted to have people collaborating with people, even if we only have contracts between the companies. And I think that's something that was kind of like put into our DNA very early on, that we need to be of the mindset that we need to be able to collaborate with different teams, different people here and there and everywhere, and we need to make it to work, because we don't have the luxury of just bringing everybody here. And I think that has carried through all those years and is still very much visible.
I was going to say, you can still see that now with a lot of partnerships that you have, and the way you've set up the company to be very much like outsourcing or co-dev and working with external people that aren't just all in-house in Finland as well. So you can see that started from very early on and carried on through. When you did start the company, like back in the early days when Nitro became its own gaming studio, did you have a long-term vision as to like what you wanted to achieve? Are there any key milestones that you really set out to achieve at that point?
Yes. So at first we wanted to make sure that we get our games out globally. That was first milestone, because when we started, we of course did a lot of homework on the whole sort of gaming market and how it functions and operates and stuff. But of course, we didn't have first-hand experience. But I think the first big milestone that we reached was in 2009 when we launched our first game, East India Company, globally, and I don't remember how many languages it was localized into, but that was still, when games were sold in boxes and stuff. So it was super cool, because we of course got all those boxes from different countries, from different manufacturers and distributors and so on. So that was the first milestone, that we want to get our product out there globally. And that box we ticked in 2009. Second big milestone, which we were chasing, was in sort of expanding the business from PC to consoles. Back in the day, that meant Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. We did get there, and we had a process to work on, but then things started to change. We ended up in some trouble with one of the projects, and it never saw the light of day. And then also at the same time, mobile gaming started booming. This was towards 2013, 2014 period. And then we made the shift that we were seeing all these sort of Swedish studios growing in headcount, like beyond 200 and so on and so on. And we thought that we're not going to be competitive in that sort of AAA spectrum by any chance, unless we want to go into those big headcounts, which we didn't want to. So what
was the reason in there? Like why you didn't want to do that?
There's quite a few. One is that we felt that it's not necessarily the type of company that we want to build, because if you have that headcount, if you are in this sort of release cycle business, especially if you do games for others, like work for hire stuff and so on, then you have quite a big pool of people that you need to actively maintain and make sure that you have the solid deal flow and so on. So it becomes very sort of disciplined in that way, which of course the flip side of the coin is that it's more and more difficult to be creative and have flexibility. And in Nitro, we've always wanted to make sure that we can navigate in different ways if we want to. So that's when we thought, okay, we can maybe see better opportunities on the mobile side. And over a period of probably close to 2 years, we transitioned almost completely from the other platforms to mobile.
Okay.
And now then again, on recent years, we have been expanding again other platforms, but we were pretty exclusively on mobile for quite a few years.
And it's just so happened that, well, maybe you can expand on as to why. Of course, Finland is a very mobile-heavy market. Like Helsinki is very heavy on the mobile side. Like you said, you compare it to Stockholm, which is more AAA, console. Why do you think that is?
I think that there's many reasons that contribute to that. Of course, there's always the sort of Nokia thing that everybody brings up, that it's sort of like this was a hotspot for mobile phones and the sort of first mobile phones that were able to act as a gaming platform. Obviously, then, Apple and iPhone came and showed everyone how to actually do it. But, there was a lot of that, a lot of engineers, a lot of designers. So there was a lot of people. And then I think the second side of the coin is that mobile games tend to be very technical. They tend to be very data-driven, engineered, lots of stuff running on the server side and things like this. Whereas if you imagine your sort of typical console game, for example, you have a lot of creative power in it, narration, animation, things like this. And I would say that in a black and white simplified world, Finland is very much more focused on the technical side of things. So it's so much easier to find, engineering power here and that stuff than it is to find creative and arts power. And that's something where we felt that overall in Finland, a lot of mobile game companies, because of the thing that they're so technical in a mindset in a way, especially free-to-play mobile games, but also mobile games can be pulled off with smaller teams, which is ideal for a country that doesn't have huge pools of developers like so many other countries have. And then I think also is that we have this little bit of a crazy Finnish export-only mindset, because our sort of domestic market, not just for games, but for anything, is so small that that's not really a business for anyone. We're, a little bit more than 5 million people. So if you want to dream big, you always go global, and mobile games were a perfect platform for that, because you don't need any middleman, you don't need anything. You just go directly to Apple and Google and boom, you're global.
So it's kind of like the environment's impacted heavily on mobile, and then it's adapted to that. That makes a lot of sense. And you've touched on it a little bit where you said at the beginning, scaling the company, the most important part was finding the right people. And that's obviously a massive value now, is having the right people in the right company. I was wondering if you can expand a little bit more on that from the beginning, how you managed to scale, the challenges with finding the right people as well.
I think it's something that it's so much easier to look at those things like now, sort of retrospectively than it was back in the day. I think for us, we've gone through many sort of iterations of Nitro, for the lack of a better word, and I think for us it's been very much like a step-by-step thing that we've sort of looked at it in a way that, okay, now we think that, okay, as a company, as a team, we're now on this level. This is where we envision certain competitors going, or if we want to get to that level, we need this and that type of skills and stuff. And then we climb up to the next level and so on. So it's been very much like us getting to the point where we wanted to kind of like reach the point where we could be competitive as an employer. That took quite many years. It's difficult to say when exactly it happened, but now it seems that for the last quite a few years, actually, we've been pretty desired employer in a way. So it's kind of like turned around. So now we have the positive problem of getting so much applications and candidates and partnerships and all these things, that is more about like, okay, how do we then do the sort of selection and blending process and all these type of things. So it's very different looking thing that we're looking at today. But I think still the core thing is the same, that it's all about not just the, the most talented people or qualified people out there, but about the good people and how to get people to blend together. And that's something that I think has always been the most important thing for us, that it's first and foremost about how do these people interact with each other. And that's the key thing. And that's something that still today continues to be the most difficult thing to solve. Like, okay, we work with this partner, or we hire these new people and blend them with this existing team. How do we facilitate that we have the best possible shot on goal of getting people to work together in a good way?
And there is now an abundance of, mobile studios in Helsinki, from where you said, years ago, there wasn't really much of that gaming scene. Now it's very heavy on that. And you mentioned it a little bit. How do you manage to stay competitive in this market now?
There's a couple of sides to that. I think, well, first and foremost is what people always ask is, of course, the money side of things. I think in Finland, based on the industry, I think we pay better than average salaries, like across the board and stuff. So that's one thing that has changed for us over the years, that we're able to be competing with the money side of things. But of course, we're not at the level where we are paying like ridiculous amounts of money just to get someone. So we're not one of those companies. And then in addition to the money side of things, what we provide is a very extensive sort of package for the employees. Like it ranges all the way from like physical healthcare to like any other forms of healthcare, to culture and benefits and stuff like insurances, what have you. So that's one of the big things, that we really try to make sure that we come from a place where we are not the largest employer out there, but the people we have, we really want to make sure that we nurture those people and make them feel very much welcome, and give them a good solid package with everything. And then definitely on top of that is our culture in a way. So I think we are in a super sweet spot between, smaller startups, think of less than 10 people and so on, where you don't have almost any like sort of stability at all. Everything's pretty much Wild West, and that's fun and crazy, but you know, some people want stability. And then on the other hand, you have the bigger organizations, but we all know what comes with that. Then it's, a lot of hierarchy and stuff that you don't necessarily want. So us being in our scope, we're roughly a little bit more than 50 people here in Finland. So that's just the sweet spot. Things can still be somewhat loose, but structured and clear and stable.
And for you as a leader, since obviously being in the startup stages early to like where you're saying now the sweet spot, how have you adapted or changed the culture of the studio to be from, early days to what you have it as now? Because I imagine it's changed a bit across the time that the company's been there. So how have you managed that sort of process?
I think there's two main things to that. One is that like what I'm doing a lot is like sort of educating myself to keep myself like relevant for Nitro. So that's the way that I look at it. Like I've been here for so long that I need to make sure that like I sort of stay ahead of things enough and get myself sort of up to speed. So that's one thing which I think that of course then reflects the Nitro's culture, because I would like to see that I've become so much better in my job over the years and so on. So that's one avenue. But when it comes to the whole Nitro, we have essentially evolved from the early days, which was, all male, pretty much the same age, this classical pink male developer concept, eating pizza, drinking Coke when we were young. Nobody had families and stuff. So that's where we started. So obviously that way of working or communicating or anything doesn't translate too well into larger organizations. So we've taken on board people who have specifically focused on, okay, how do we evolve Nitro in a direction that we maintain the good things in our culture, and how do we define and crystallize our values in a way that we are welcoming also from people from any other countries, culture, what have you, the whole sort of setup. And we had a 1 year process on that topic some maybe 4 years ago, when we involved everyone in the company to sort of go through the documenting and discussing and processing that topic. And I think we've been pretty good on those things after that in making sure that we can be welcoming and open, but still there's a very unique twist to Nitro we haven't destroyed in the mix.
And culture is not just like a flick of a switch, like it's a long-term thing that everybody has to implement and be on board with it to make that shift. And, was there anybody in the early days when you started to make that shift that you ended up losing from the company, that obviously you couldn't get on board with that? Because I've heard a lot of people, a lot of other companies, the same things happen there. They've had to change the culture to grow, but not everybody can get on board with that, and then the structure of the company changes a lot as well.
I would say yes. I don't think anyone has sort of left just because of any cultural change or things like that, but it's been, I think, very closely tied to those things. And sometimes we do mistakes and we make hires, for example, that we later on realize that now we're not exactly looking at a culture fit, and those obviously have to be resolved because that cannot be continued. It's not going to be good for anyone involved and stuff. Sometimes it's people who have been in the company for a longer time, and then the company is evolving, but they don't want to, for whatever reason, go with that evolution moving forward. So then it has let the people going and stuff. So that definitely has happened. But I think that while we discuss a lot about culture and how we collaborate and values and why we do things this way versus that way here in Nitro, I think still, end of the day, I'm a big believer that culture is sort of, it's the thing that happens when no one's watching. Like the moment you sort of are working remotely or whatever, alone at the office, like how do things go then?
Yeah.
And I think that's the culture that we have, that in Nitro, you don't need to be afraid of what happens when no one's watching. That's we've been really, really blessed with that.
Yeah, and you should be proud of that as well, because it takes a lot to implement that type of culture in a company. I speak to a lot of leaders, and they talk about the mistakes they've made, and obviously people learn from mistakes, and that's what ultimately, you know, makes things go further, and they've got to learn from that. Is there any particular mistakes that you can pinpoint, either in your leadership or your career, where you thought, you know, I'm so glad that's almost happened now, you know, to look back at it and go, you know, I'm a better person for that, I'm a better manager or leader for that as well?
Well, plenty. So obviously, let me think. I think that the biggest mistakes that I remember, and like for myself and also for other people in leading position or in leadership in general, is situations where leads do not lead, or they don't do what is expected to be done as leads, but instead they do something else. And like quite often that something else ends up being micromanaging or doing something as a substitute to avoid the topic of doing what actually I'm supposed to be doing here, which is, we often call those the difficult decisions or difficult actions to perform. And those are things that like we always go into the mode as leads where we try to find ways to justify things so that this difficult thing wouldn't, you know, exist, or maybe it's not like that, maybe we don't need to go there yet, maybe things are not actually like that. And that's something that I find very universal. Like I do it, every other lead I meet is doing it. When, you know, we get people from other backgrounds to Nitro and leadership, everybody goes into that mode because they want to avoid difficult topics. And I think that's just something that like we haven't yet discovered as human beings a good formula to sort of get each other out from that loop, because we tend to support each other in that loop, that maybe you can buy a little bit more time and stuff, and everybody knows that that's just going to make things worse if we don't react to something right now. So in other words, I'm not a big believer in waiting to be a good approach to many of the things, but more like why not yesterday type of mindset, acting on things. And I think that's something that smaller and bigger sort of mistakes and hiccups in Nitro throughout the years are somewhat related to letting something cook a little bit too long. I think on Nitro's website, I'd seen all the pictures of individuals from leadership, and under yours, I think your little quote is "Make it happen." Get it done. I'll get it done. So it sort of leads into that mentality. How often do you spend like on personal development in terms of leadership? These days, I'm a big believer in, you know, personal coaches, like for leadership, much like for, you know, anything where you want to get results. And that is something that I have had my current personal coach for maybe close to 5 years now. And I spend actively 1 or 2 days a month, like on the topic. Not necessarily full days, but 1 or 2 days I'm, you know, heavily on that topic, like with an intentional thing, and then ad hoc the rest of the time. I'm not that good anymore in terms of going through, books and stuff. I try to sort of get into that mode every now and then. I used to do that a lot more when I was younger, but these days I'm not that good at using books and stuff to educate myself anymore. So I need that human connection, someone really challenging me.
Is that more of a time issue?
Maybe time. I don't know any of the excuses out there. I just feel that I need that. On one hand, I think that okay, I know something, so maybe I don't know. I just need that someone who's like close to your physical personal trainer that is really pushing the last word out of you. Okay, hey, that's a good answer, but not good enough. You try to figure it out better type of thing. So, but I think it's end of the day it boils down to the sort of human touch in a way. That the older I get, the more I appreciate the sort of chemistry between people and how to get the connection going and stuff like that.
Well, we spoke a lot about how Nitro sort of come to be and yourself and your personal background. So I want to talk a little bit about like the Nitro currently in the projects and the future, what that holds as well. So what are you most excited about at the moment in terms of what you've got currently going on?
Everything. We're right now in a happy place in so many different ways. For one, Nitro is like performance-wise, we're stable, we're performing and so on, based on what we've ever done. The project portfolio we have at the moment is something that is good and well aligned with our vision. We want to focus on the category of action and shooter games, and last year we achieved that we basically everything we do, even including the customer process we do for some other companies, are in that category. So we can really focus. Then outside of that, what I'm excited about especially is the sort of ongoing direction with other platforms. So we're working on multi-platform projects with our partners, and we are also looking more and more into expanding that direction with our own games that we do and self-finance and so on. And it also seems that the whole video games market is conveniently moving into the direction where the platforms not blend together more and more, but become more and more like a platform mix for your franchise that you want to operate in a way. So I think everything is headed in a very cool direction in gaming in general, and also for Nitro. So I like where we are.
Do you think Nitro's a little bit ahead of the curve with that type of stuff, where it being more like cross-platform or on, like you said, that closer relationship with stuff, or?
I would, of course, like to think that way. But I think something that we have always done in Nitro is that when you hang around in the games industry for a while, you start to see certain things coming and going. Platform generations come and go, and categories of games come and go, and stuff like that. And we have been focusing on sort of this action and shooter games category more and more before it kind of like became a thing on mobile and maybe even peaked in a way. And we're still doing that because we see more and more opportunities down the line in the horizon. And the way I see things is that we, especially from mobile point of view, we had our sort of first wave of shooter games, then maybe the second, but what's very much happening now is that especially the bigger players, like think about your biggest IP holders out there, big gaming companies out there, are starting to really include mobile into the platform mix as not as like a separate sort of entity that, hey, it's mobile, it's free to play, it can be this big financially, but more like that, okay, how does it support all the other platforms as a user acquisition platform, for example, or any other direction. So I think the whole concept of approaching that, hey, this is my game, this is my IP, these are my customers, and these are the platforms out there that I can reach out to my customers. That way of thinking, I think we're starting to get there in a very interesting way, which is perfect for us because we are in pretty unique position that we can offer our expertise on pretty much any platform out there. We work with all the different game engines, also proprietary engines and stuff. We got that technical side of things covered, and that's something that's not that common.
And how do you sort of strategize? You do your own games, you work co-development, you publish games. How do you figure out what's the right balance with that as to like how much we should do of one or the other?
Yeah. Basically, how we figured out is our sort of long-term goal, which is of course that we want to make sure that we have opportunities for that, like big hit games one way or another. So that's what defines things first and foremost, and that means that when we look at a partner project, for example, to get involved with some game that a partner might have, like, okay, what's the potential if that materializes? What's in it for Nitro? Does that look good? Does that make sense? If yes, then we'll go forward. Same thing for our own games. We want to work on things that, like, if it fails, then that's dynamics of the industry. But if it succeeds, how does that look like? So we don't want something that, okay, it succeeds, but then it's kind of like meh. So that's not us. And then the second thing is, which changes a little bit from time to time, but it's the sort of like, okay, how do we then introduce that balance that you referred to? And this year it's very easy because it's financial mix. So I want Nitro to invest in a way that we still stay profitable at all times. We very much focus this year, especially on minimizing the risk. So we take very limited investments and we're pretty picky on those. Some other years we've had different type of conditions and driving mechanisms when we wanted to intentionally take bigger risks and invest more, even if it means that losing profits while doing so. But this year is very straightforward because money is easy, it's just numbers. So as long as the numbers are on black, we're going to the right direction.
I suppose it does become easier when it's financial the figures, and there's obviously a lot of data as well to go off, but there must be an element of it which is just like personal judgment that comes from experience being in the industry, like either saying yes to stuff in the past that hasn't worked and realizing why, or saying no to things and realizing, oh, maybe that was a mistake, from doing it for a long time now. How much does your judgment come into play in these decisions?
These days, I would say more and more, but only from one angle, and that is sort of that, okay, where is this going type of angle? So like personal judgment in terms of like, is this a good concept or not? No, that's for other people to work on. But in terms of like, what's the scope of this thing that we're looking at? That's where it comes in more and more. And that's, I think, one of the things when we earlier spoke about the mistakes in the past and where people don't lead, something where I think I have made a mistake quite a few times in the history of Nitro is that people come with something that gets introduced, that this is this size of a thing that we want to work on. And you kind of know that, hey, maybe they're being a little bit naive because that will expand, and in reality it will actually be this size of thing. And we can't afford this size of thing, but because it's packaged so small, so then it gets greenlit and stuff, and you don't kind of like use your brain. But that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Like if you have the experience, you have seen so many processes, then that's exactly what you should bring to the table. That, hey guys, love the idea, but there's no way this won't expand out of this scope. And that's something that I think not just us, but so many other game companies fall into the same trap over and over again, that they think that, okay, now I'm making a game that's, takes this much time, money, and people, and then end up realizing that it's 5 times more than that, ridiculous things happen in this business. So that's something where I am more and more subjectively involved. Like, what is the scope that we're really looking at? We're not looking at additional 3 months, but actually what we need is closer to 9 months. Things like this, where you introduce the sort of common sense into the thing based on your experience.
I think you've spoken previously, I've seen, about the preparing to fail type of concept and that mindset. Is that, like, where's that sort of come from your side?
That comes from few different very expensive mistakes we've done in the past and painful. Not just expensive in terms of money, but when things go south, you lose people, you lose money, you lose many things. And like the way I used to look at things back in the day was more like that, how to say it, if things fail, can we still survive? And we were always damn good at surviving. Like at some point, somebody referred to Nitro as the sort of cockroaches of the gaming industry. Like they don't survive, noob striking. And I think our problem was that we were really good at surviving. So we sort of found ourselves in that survival mode very often. Whereas then later on, when I hopefully think that both me and us here in Nitro have become a little bit wiser is that now I look things more in the direction that, okay, we do this. If this thing fails, it's not about if we survive, but can we still succeed? Like, can we still succeed together as a company, even if this thing fails?
Yeah.
So that's the big mindset shift, I would say, that has happened over recent years.
And what are your thoughts on like either emerging technologies in the market, where the industry is right now, and what you think the industry is going to look like in sort of 5 to 10 years time?
I think there's so much cool stuff going on with technologies always in connection with gaming. So it's hard to say that one of those will stay. But something that I think has been super clear essentially since when we started making games is that, and something that nothing has changed my mind along the way is that end of the day, we are firmly going into the direction where games will become platform independent in a way, or at least IPs and franchises. And the way I envision future is that like we will have games that are more and more part of my life cycle or lifestyle in a way, and as a consumer, I don't need to worry about this or that platform or hardware or where do I purchase the game, but somehow these things will go in the direction that it's just a bunch of different screens during the day depending on where I am, and that's it. And everything is headed in that direction, like the computing power on the server side, games as a streaming type of service, the concept of games being on multiple platforms and maybe even some platform holders losing a little bit of their power, like allowing alternative distribution methods and stuff. And of course, the game designs have been evolving in the direction of live service already for a long, long time, and the whole consumer behavior. So I think that that's something that which single technology will stay or single hardware doesn't matter that much as long as that's the direction, because I think that's going to be super good for gaming, because then it means that there's room for everyone in that. Like obviously the biggest ones are going to be even bigger, but then there's so many avenues also for the indies and the solo developers and all that.
So you're pretty optimistic about the market. I know it's a pretty, sort of challenging time for a lot of companies and people now at the moment, but like you said, cycles come and go and hopefully it will pass. But you fairly optimistic about the next couple of years for the industry?
Yeah, because basically something that during the recent years when it's been tough, like you said, for so many companies out there, and I think for a very good reason also in many ways, because there was a lot of over-investment in gaming, which that happens and things go in cycles, like you said. But I think something that hasn't been spoken that much is that, okay, how does it look like moving forward, like as a result of all those negative things? And there's so many cool things that have happened during the last couple of years, like for example, the sort of quality level that you can get from solo developers or super small indie teams. That's like mind blowing in some cases, and it really seems that like this concept of indie game development doesn't anymore translate almost at all to things like low production value or cheap look or anything like that. So making games, and especially making more sort of higher production value games, has become more accessible in so many ways. And that's something that I think is nothing but positive. All the tools out there, whether we're talking about, Unreal, Unities, what have you, or any other sort of tools, they're just so damn good. So it's not like, when I was young and when we started making games, it was still somewhat complicated, and the tools were not good.
And Nitro's got a very strong emphasis on shooter games as well. Is that, driven from your particular passion for shooter games since the sort of the start of Nitro, or where's that come from?
Essentially, it comes from within the team. We went through a lot of those things. We call it our sort of vision definement, like what it is that we want to do and stuff like that. And we call it action and shooter games because we don't want to sort of limit the word shooter games. For many people means, first person stick shooter type of thing. So we don't want to limit to that, but essentially for us it's games where things go boom, and that's the thing. So one thing was definitely that's what was in the team and what people wanted to work on, and we felt that that's also a unique opportunity for us because we earlier spoke about the sort of positioning and getting the best talent. We want to be the company that, hey, if you work with us, we guarantee that you get to work on cool stuff. And so on. So that's one thing. But the second thing, which I think is more important for the company as a business, is of course the market. And that's something that there's a couple of categories out there that are always popular, like on PC, it's definitely strategy games. Like PC as a platform has been dying as long as we've been in this business, and still, it's always been PC that's somehow surviving and even growing, and strategy games have always been there. The other category is shooter games, which I think has translated so much better on other platforms. So whenever there's a new device or new piece of hardware, new way of playing games, usually shooters never are first games on the platforms. But after a while, they enter the platform, and then they are consistently the top 1, top 2, top 3 games, and so on. And that's just the way it goes. So we feel it's also from the market perspective pretty good bet in the long run. So,
and last question: what's been the most rewarding part of your journey since like the inception of Nitro?
I think I would like to say our people in general. That's something that I feel super privileged that we've had such a good people. I'm very much in a people mode right now because we just came back from a kickoff with the team today. So it's been, I've been surrounded by people from Nitro during the previous 3 days now. But that's something that we really have an awesome bunch of people, and even people who worked at Nitro at some point and are now working somewhere else. Some of those people come back and rework at Nitro again, or then they just hang around with us and stuff like that. So that's something that is what keeps me going. So that's something that, I feel so damn good that I want to make sure that I'm a competitive part of this team here in Nitro, and that I do my share, and that really reflects back from these guys. That's amazing. And then maybe personally, one sort of yes, we made it to a certain type of milestone when we listed the company in Stockholm in 2017. That was something that was not huge for Nitro's operations in many ways, but as a personal milestone that we've been doing this a long time. Now we ring that bell together with my co-founder Antti, and that was something that we knew that not too many companies get to do this, not too many companies. There were so many, we did this type of thing. So that was just a fantastic moment in time.
Just to branch off to that, do you, or how often do you spend time reflecting on the achievements that you've or the milestones that you've hit?
I have this habit of doing this sort of reflection 2 times per year, usually during the sort of summer holidays and the winter holidays break. And I like to sort of that also is part of the sort of leadership training that I go through with my coach. But I'm a big believer that you are definitely supposed to recognize achievements in your day, in your week, in your month, in your year, in your career, so that you get a storyline in your head about how things go. And I think that that's the way that keeps you going and achieving more. And you need those steps and milestones in order to have some sort of strategy that how do you develop yourself as well, and therefore the company moving forward.
Fantastic. Well, Jussi, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, we'll see you next time.